Good morning and welcome to the CDBG Grant Administration Workshop on Chapter 6, the Construction and Labor Chapter of the CDBG Grant Administration Manual and its associated Labor Standards Officer Toolkit. My name is Jeanette Blyes, and I am the Outreach Coordinator for the Community MT Division at the Montana Department of Commerce. Next slide. I want to start with a couple of housekeeping notes. First, this training is being recorded and will be posted on our website with Chapter 6 on the CDBG Grant Administration Manual webpage. Now I will show you how to find it on the Commerce website. Go to commerce.mt.gov, click on the Infrastructure and Planning tab, select Community Development Block Grant Program, then click on CDBG Grant Administration Manual on the left sidebar. That will take you to the manual, which has a drop-down menu for each individual chapter, as well as all of the associated toolkits below. Next slide. We also have a short video overview of the revised construction and labor chapter, posted with the PDF of the chapter itself. We will have time for questions and discussion at the end of this session. Please feel free to submit your questions in the chat as we go, or wait until the end to raise your hand. We will address all questions at the end. Next slide. The goal of this workshop is to provide a clear step-by-step understanding of the state and federal construction and labor requirements, and to provide you with the resources you need in the toolkit to complete each step as you move through bidding and construction process for your CDBG-funded project. In this session, I will walk through the key components of Chapter 6, including Davis-Bacon wages, the steps to ensuring compliance with construction and labor requirements, and documenting procurement of your contractor. And we will walk through the Labor Standards Officer Toolkit. And as I mentioned, we will have time for questions and discussion at the end. Next slide. At the beginning of the chapter, there is a words to know section with the vocabulary and definitions helpful for understanding CDBG construction and labor requirements. I will provide definitions for these terms as we move through the workshop. CDBG grantees must document compliance with CDBG labor standards, civil rights, and construction requirements. The processes described in Chapter 6 will help grantees promote full and open competition in the selection of their prime contractor and guarantee fair compensation for workers. I will talk about Davis-Bacon wages on the next slide. Then I will walk us through all the steps to ensuring compliance with construction and labor requirements. And then I will go over the construction procurement documentation CDBG grantees must have on file and submit to your CDBG project specialist for our files. Next slide. The Davis-Bacon Act and Davis-Bacon related acts are the federal laws guaranteeing fair compensation to all laborers and mechanics working on CDBG-funded construction projects totaling over $2,000. Davis-Bacon applies to non-residential construction of public buildings or works. Davis-Bacon applies to residential construction only when it involves properties with 8 or more units. Davis-Bacon wages are established by the U.S. Department of Labor by trade or work classification and are based on comparative data at the county or regional level. The federal wages established for each county are frequently updated and referred to as the Davis-Bacon wage determination. Davis-Bacon wage determinations are published on a website known as the System for Award Management, or SAM.gov. We will now walk through how to find the wage determination on SAM.gov. You start by going to SAM.gov, click on Wage Determinations, then choose Public Buildings or Works. Select Montana from the drop-down menu, then select your county. We'll just select a random county. Then choose the construction type. Your choices are heavy, building, highway, or residential. In most cases for our projects, you'll be selecting heavy or building, and I can explain more what those definitions mean. And then you will click on the right there where you find the ID number for that wage determination, and then you can have an option of printing it or downloading it. So the difference real quick between highway, building, and heavy and residential, the highway type of construction includes construction, alteration, or repair of roads, streets, highways, alleys, parking areas, and other similar projects, not incidental to the main category of construction, which is either residential or building for housing development projects. Building is used for the construction of buildings that are not for residential use unless they are over 4 stories high. So it can be used for a high-rise apartment building, nursing homes, community centers, fire stations, commercial buildings, parking garages, dormitories, and many other types of buildings. Heavy construction includes those projects that are not properly classified as residential, building, or highway. Some examples include our water and our wastewater projects, storage tanks, lagoons, a lot of the infrastructure that is citywide and has a citywide purpose. It is important to clarify that Davis-Bacon wages are federal minimum wages set for specific work classifications by county and in no way prohibit contractors from paying their workers more. In Montana, if the Montana prevailing wage for a particular work classification is set higher than what is published in the Davis-Bacon wage determination, contractors are required to pay the higher of the two. Next slide. There are several points throughout the life of your CDBG funded project when grantees must be focused on complying with the CDBG construction and labor requirements. It all starts actually with the selection of the architect and engineer. From the very beginning of your project, when you are first procuring a project engineer or architect, there are federal civil rights laws that must be followed. I will not go too deep into it because this is covered in greater detail in our Chapter 3 procurement workshop. But with each procurement action taken on a CDBG funded project, grantees must perform and document proactive outreach to disadvantaged minority and women-owned business enterprises, also known as DB MEBI WEBI, and the grantees must ensure compliance with Section 3 of the HUD Act of 1968. Section 3 requires, to the greatest extent feasible, that CDBG projects provide job training, employment, and contracting opportunities for low or very low income residents living in the project area. We have a very specific toolkit called the Section 3 and DB MEBI WEBI toolkit on our website that provides all the language and steps you must follow to be in compliance with these requirements. Next, during your bid document review, once the project engineer or architect has finalized the project design, the grantee must submit a draft of the bid package to the project specialist so Commerce can review it to ensure it contains all of the construction contract language required by state and federal law. A bid package template is available from the Engineers Joint Contract Documents Committee and American Institute of Architects, which include all of the required civil rights and labor standards language required by every state and federal funding source. A bid document review checklist is available in our procurement toolkit and is covered in greater detail in our Chapter 3 procurement workshop. One other important detail I want to mention is that the bid documents must include copies of both the Davis-Bacon and Montana prevailing wage determinations and must also include language that the contractor is required to pay the higher of the two. The invitation to bid in the package must also include a Section 3 notice. Before publishing the bid advertisement, grantees must have documentation demonstrating completion of environmental review and authorized land use, must perform direct outreach to contractors in accordance with Section 3 and DB Maybe Weeby toolkit on Commerce's website. Once the bid is advertised, grantees must check the sam.gov website that we just showed you to ensure that they are using the most updated Davis-Bacon wage determination within 10 days of bid opening. I will go into further detail on that when I walk through our labor standards toolkit. Grantees will then perform the bid opening, issue the notice of award, and move forward with executing the construction contract, certifying their bid tabs. Next slide. Once the prime construction contractor for the project is awarded the contract, the grantee, the labor standards officer, grant administrator, design professionals, and project funding agencies will participate in a pre-construction conference with the prime contractor and all of the subcontractors before the start of construction. At this time, the prime and the subs are advised of all the overall management of the project, including the civil rights and labor standards provisions. The pre-construction conference is a critical opportunity for the Labor Standards Officer, also known as the LSO, to inform the prime contractor and the subcontractors of their labor standards and civil rights obligations, and to establish the LSO as the point of contact on labor standards and civil rights compliance throughout construction of the project. The LSO is the person designated by the CDBG grantee to be responsible for ensuring compliance with CDBG labor standards requirements. I will go into more details on the responsibilities of the LSO when I walk through the resources and guidance available in the Labor Standards Officer Toolkit. At the pre-construction meeting, the grantee must document the contractors' and subcontractors' attendance, take minutes, and obtain a form signed by the prime contractor acknowledging that they received all of the CDBG required information and materials necessary to comply with federal civil rights and labor standards requirements. I will talk more about wage classifications later when I cover the duties of the Labor Standards Officer. But before construction begins, the grantee must confirm with the CDBG project specialist whether the Davis-Bacon wage determination includes classifications for all of the types of work that will be performed on the project. We also have some new guidance on our project signs that currently only new CDBG awardees must comply with going forward. New CDBG grantees must display a project sign 18 by 24 inches. It must be posted at the project site and display the grant funding source. It must be visible to the public from nearby streets and walkways without obstruction, and must use Commerce-provided graphics and be able to withstand weather conditions. I'm now going to show you how you can download and print the sign directly from our website. You can go to commerce.mt.gov. And you'll click on Public Participation. Scroll down a little and click on Branding for Partners. And this is where you will find all of your Commerce project sign options. Once the sign is posted, a photo must be provided to the CDBG project specialist. If you have a project sign question, please consult your project specialist. And when all of these steps have been completed, the grantee may issue the notice to proceed to the construction contractor. The grantee is also responsible for conducting employee interviews. I will talk more about this when I cover the duties of the Labor Standards Officer, but while construction is underway, the LSO or their designee must conduct monthly interviews with construction laborers and mechanics representing each wage classification on the project, must keep the interviews confidential from the contractor, resolve any labor standards violations, and maintain a detailed record of all administrative and enforcement activities with respect to labor standards. This person must also ensure that the required labor standards posters and wage determinations are posted and accessible at the project site. You are also responsible for sharing change orders. Um, you can expect for all change orders of $5,000 or more, you must share that with your CDBG project specialist for review before they are executed. Grantees should also plan to schedule a project file monitoring and construction site visit with their CDBG project specialist while construction is still underway. And when construction is complete and the project engineer or architect issues the certificate of substantial completion, the grantee will need to send a copy to the project specialist. Next slide. This is a list of the construction procurement documentation grantees must have on file and send to their CDBG project specialist. You will need to send the Montana Department of Environmental Quality approval letter, if applicable, affidavits of publication of your bid advertisement, documentation demonstrating DB MEB WEB and Section 3 outreach, addendums to the bid documents, if any, your executed construction contract and project manual, which includes the bid bond, performance bond, payment bond, notice of award, and notice to proceed, any completed environmental permits, your certified bid tabs. Next slide. Your site title opinion and or any URA documentation if land purchase or easements are involved with your project. The meeting agenda and minutes from the pre-construction meeting. A copy of the signed contractor's receipt of required materials, which is signed at the pre-con meeting, and that form is in your LSO toolkit. The name, address, and UEI number for the prime contractor. I will talk about that a little bit in a little bit. A list of all Davis-Bacon wage classifications that will be used based on the applicable Davis-Bacon wage determination, and a copy of the contractor reporting form completed with all the names and contact information for the prime and the subs that will be working on the project. Next slide. So now that I have walked through all of the components of the construction and labor chapter of the Grant Administration Manual, I want to introduce you to the Labor Standards Officer Toolkit. The primary purpose of the Labor Standards Officer Toolkit is to serve as a complete step-by-step guide for the Labor Standards Officer, or LSO, designated to your CDBG project. The LSO is designated by the CDBG grantee and is responsible for ensuring compliance with all CDBG labor standards requirements. The toolkit outlines 10 steps to successfully serving as the LSO and provides the associated templates and forms needed to fulfill their duties. The Labor Standards Officer Toolkit starts out with a link to download a very important set of HUD publications that your LSO will need called Davis-Bacon and Labor Standards, Agency Contractor Guide, and its addendum. This guide provides very clearly written and easy to understand explanations for all of the topics your LSO needs to be on top of to ensure your project is compliant with Davis-Bacon, civil rights, and labor standards requirements. Our toolkit also provides a link to a couple of pre-recorded HUD trainings. One is an LSO basics, and the other is on how to review certified payrolls. For the remainder of this workshop, I will walk through each of the responsibilities of the Labor Standards Officer and the templates, guides, and forms available in our LSO toolkit. Next slide. When the project's Labor Standards Officer is determined, please ensure that the CDBG project specialist assigned to the project is provided with an updated management plan clearly identifying the LSO by name with a direct email address and phone number. The management plan template is located in the Getting Started toolkit. The management plan is originally submitted with the CDBG application, and then again, if updates are needed to meet CDBG startup requirements. Please do not just name the person's title or position who is going to serve as the LSO. Grantees can designate anyone to serve as the project LSO as long as the person does not work for the prime contractor. Next slide. After the bid opening and before the notice of award is issued to the prime contractor, the LSO must share the name, address, and unique entity ID, or UEI, number for the lowest responsive bidder with the project specialist so state and federal debarment can be checked. Commerce will not perform debarment checks on subcontractors because all clauses in the prime's contract apply to the subcontractors. Next slide. It is the LSO's responsibility to ensure that the correct Davis-Bacon wage determination is included in the construction bid documents during the sealed bid process. In most cases, the applicable Davis-Bacon wage determination is locked in based on the advertised bid opening date, and the project specialist checks to ensure the proper determination is being used when performing the bid document review. However, if the bid opening date changes once the project is out to bid, or if the wage determination is updated while the project is out to bid, it is the LSO's responsibility to update the Davis-Bacon wage determination in the bid documents by issuing an addendum. It is the LSO's responsibility to understand that a couple of other sets of circumstances can trigger a change in the Davis-Bacon lock-in date. The Davis-Bacon wage determination lock-in date is the bid opening date if construction contract is awarded within 90 days of bid opening. However, the lock-in date is the construction contract award date if the construction contract is not awarded within 90 days of bid opening. And it is the construction start date if construction does not begin within 90 days of the construction contract award. Next slide. The LSO is responsible for presenting the labor standards and civil rights requirements to the prime contractor and its subcontractors attending the pre-construction meeting. To help the LSO meet this requirement, A script is provided within this toolkit for the LSO to read at the pre-construction meeting. Next slide. To document that the contractor received copies of materials that they are required to post in plain view of all the workers at the project site, as well as receiving helpful information related to the applicable labor standards and civil rights requirements, the LSO must obtain the signature of the prime contractor at the pre-construction meeting on a form included in this toolkit called the Contractor's Receipt of Required Materials. Please send a copy of the signed form with a copy of the pre-construction meeting agenda and minutes to your project specialist after the pre-construction meeting. The contractor's receipt of required materials form, as well as the following list of materials required to be shared with the prime contractor at the pre-construction meeting, are included in this toolkit. The required materials includes the HUD Davis-Bacon and Labor Standards Agency Contractor Guide, the HUD Davis-Bacon and Labor Standards Agency Contractor Guide Addendum, a diagram on how to properly complete the WH347 certified payroll forms, and the job site notices that must be posted in plain view for all workers at the project site. Also, on or around the time of the pre-construction meeting, the LSO must complete the contractor reporting form included on page 3 of the contract and employment report form included with this toolkit for all contractors working on the project. Please remember to include the engineering firm's contract numbers as well on this form. If you have questions about how to complete this form, please contact your project specialist. Next slide. Thank you. This is the slide we need to be on. On or around the time of the pre-construction meeting, the labor standards officer must review the Davis-Bacon wage determination with the contractor and ensure there is a wage classification for every type of work associated with the project. Even if the Montana prevailing wage decision wages are all higher than the federal, the LSO and contractor must perform this review and request a work classification be created and added to the federal determination if needed. If a necessary work classification is missing from the federal determination, the LSO and contractor must submit a request to the U.S. Department of Labor to have one created and added to that county's determination. Please consult with your project specialist if you think a request for a work classification is necessary. Next slide. I believe we need to go to the next slide. Thank you. The LSO is responsible for reviewing every certified payroll form against the applicable Davis-Bacon wage determination to ensure that all laborers and mechanics are paid in compliance with HUD requirements. For specific guidance on how to perform a payroll review, please refer to the diagram provided in this toolkit. You may also consult the Reviewing Payroll section of the Davis-Bacon and Labor Standards Contractor Guide Addendum and the HUD training video included in this toolkit. As the LSO reviews the payrolls against the Davis-Bacon wage determination, please make marks demonstrating that they have been checked and initial each page. The LSO should keep one clean, unmarked set of payrolls for the project and one marked up set to demonstrate that they are reviewed. The marked up set of payrolls will be submitted to Commerce when the grantee is seeking CDBG reimbursement for the associated contractor's pay application. The prime contractor and all subcontractors via the prime contractor must submit certified payroll forms to the LSO for each week of work, from the time the project begins through completion. Weekly payrolls must be numbered sequentially and submitted by the prime to the LSO for review no later than 7 days following the end of each pay period. The contractor must use the WH-347 payroll form, which is included with this toolkit, or a form containing identical information. If no work is performed on the project during a given period, the contractor may indicate no work performed on the form and provide the range of dates for the pay periods that no work was performed. Employers are not required to submit no work performed payrolls, provided that the payrolls are numbered sequentially or that the employer has provided written notice that its work on the project has been suspended. Next slide. During construction, the LSO or their designee will conduct interviews with construction laborers and mechanics representing each wage classification on the project. The contractor and/or subcontractor is required to allow access to the site and workers for the purpose of completing interviews, and the interviews must be kept confidential from the contractor. The LSO must review payrolls weekly so they can be compared with the information provided in the interviews. The LSO will resolve any labor standards violations promptly and maintain a detailed record of all administrative and enforcement activities with respect to labor standards. Please use the required HUD 11 Record of Employee Interview form and instructions included with this toolkit to ensure that the employee interviews are conducted according to HUD requirements. If the LSO designates someone to conduct the interviews, the LSO is required to review and sign off on all employee interview forms. Next slide. The LSO or designee must conduct on-site inspections to ensure that the following labor standards posters are put up in a prominent and accessible place where they may be easily seen by employees. Next slide. During construction, the LSO or their designee will conduct on-site inspections and be asked to provide Commerce with a photo of the required labor standards posters that must be posted at the construction site in a prominent and accessible place where they may be easily seen by the workers. The posters include the applicable Davis-Bacon wage decision and additional classifications if necessary, the U.S. Department of Labor's Davis-Bacon poster, also known as the WH 1321, an Equal Employment Opportunity Know Your Rights poster, and the OSHA Job Safety and Health Protection poster. Next slide. As stated, the LSO must review all certified payrolls and compare them with the information collected during the employee interviews, noting discrepancies, resolving labor standards violations promptly, and maintaining a detailed record of all administrative and enforcement activities with respect to labor standards. To document labor standards compliance, as the project moves through construction, the LSO will complete and sign a certification of labor compliance form that must be submitted with each request for reimbursement for construction costs associated with the project. A copy of this form is included with this toolkit. For specific guidance on labor standards documentation that must be submitted with the request for reimbursement involving contractors' pay applications, please review our Requests for Reimbursement toolkit. Next slide. This concludes our workshop on the CDBG Construction and Labor Chapter and Labor Standards Officer Toolkit. Thank you so much for joining. We would now like to open it up for questions. If you have any project-specific questions, we ask that you please contact your project specialist to discuss those separately.
Good morning, everyone. This is Rosie Goldich, the CDBG coordinator. There are a couple of different ways you can ask us a question. You can either put them into the chat You can put them into the Q&A feature, or you can raise your hand. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, so Tammy Stewart included in the Q&A, how do we find out who our coordinator is? And that's a great question. You will receive a startup letter from the Department of Commerce with each project, CDBG project that you're awarded. And in that startup letter, your assigned project specialist will be included, and they will reach out to you with further instructions. So you don't need to search through, who exactly is who's your specialist. They will reach out to you. Good question. Thanks, Tammy. Anyone else?
Rosie, there's another question in the chat,
Oh,
or in the questions, I'm sorry.
okay, so Jason is asking, is a site title opinion always required for a CDBG project? Um, I'm not entirely sure about your question, Jason. I might reach out after our presentation for more details about the project that you're asking about. I'm not quite sure. Jeanette, do you know how to answer Jason's question?
I think my understanding is that a site title opinion is always necessary, assuming that the project, and it's basically documentation that demonstrates that the project is occurring on publicly owned land, that it's not privately owned land. So if the project is on private property, that's a different situation. Some of our projects are in some cases, but in the most generally, um, that is my understanding. So if that guidance has changed, we can definitely let the group know. But that's my understanding that yes, it's just documentation demonstrating that it's where, who has ownership of that property.
Okay, great. Thanks, Jeanette. Any other questions? Oh, we got another one. Do you recommend that the LSO be different from the project manager or grant administrator? Oh, that is a good question. Certainly the grant administrator can be the LSO. Um, that is an option. It's whoever could be readily available to be on site and do labor interviews. It cannot be the contractor for, conflict of interest reasons. But it could be a grant administrator. We've seen the applicant itself. If if they have the capacity to do so, they can be the LSO, or it can be the grant administrator. Yep. As long as they have the capacity to be on site and doing labor interviews and make sure all the labor standards requirements are being followed.
And I would add, Rosie, that a designee can be who is more likely to be on site or has more access to the site can be used, but that LSO has to sign off on everything.
Right.
Yeah. So the LSO doesn't have to be, within ready distance, but it, as we explained, it is a fairly labor intensive role. So it can be anyone who's just capable of and has that capacity, as Rosie said.
Right. Good questions, everyone. Is there a spot within the CDBG toolkits that specifies the site title requirements? I believe so. If you look in our construction and labor chapter, in the CDBG Grant Administration Manual, that should answer your questions. If you don't find the answers that you're looking for in that chapter, I suggest reaching out to your project specialist. And Stephanie put that chapter in the chat. Thanks, Stephanie.
And you may also be able to find it in the bid document review checklist. It may be possibly listed there too, with the procurement chapter. So we'll have to look there as well. Excellent. Thank you, Stephanie. Page 5, chapter 6. Thanks.
Any more questions from the group? Okay. Well, I'm not seeing any. So, thanks again, Jeanette, for a great presentation on labor standards. We did end a little bit early today. So what I'm suggesting we do is that we pick up again at 9:50. Let's give everyone a little bit of a break. It gives us time to readjust into our next presentation, which will be request for reimbursement. So thanks, Jeanette, again. Yeah, and I'll see everyone back at 9:50 to talk about our next topic. Thanks.